All right, glad to have you back. Business Nigeria live from Abuja studios. Well, Nigeria's headline inflation rate hits 33.69% in April, up from 33.20% in March 2024. This is according to the latest report by the Nigerian Bureau of Statistics. From food prices to transport costs, inflationary pressure have permeated various facets of the economy, posing challenges for business, consumers, and policymakers alike. According to experts, the surge in Nigeria's inflation rate requires a closer examination of the underlying drivers and implication of this upward trend on the economy. But what are these key fundamentals that we've been talking about for some time affecting Nigeria's inflation, and how can we address some of the challenges? Well, I'm being joined again this afternoon live in the studio by an international business and projects development consultant, Dr. Emeka. Okay, good. Thank you so much. It's good to have you in Abuja studio live.
Good to have you in Abuja, Tolu.
Thank you so much. When I saw inflation figures yesterday, coincidentally, the last time inflation came out, you were on the show. So I said, what do you make of the figures of this time? From 33 point, we're at 33.69 now. Compared with what we had last month, what do you say about the jump?
Well, let's start this way.
Okay.
It's not a death knell. Like I told you the last time.
Yes, indeed.
There are other countries that have inflation. China should be about 80-something%. America maybe even a little higher. It's not your percentage of inflation that matters. It is the underlying factors, okay, and what is triggering or what is helping you to stem it. And in this case, in the case of Nigeria, I'd like us to look at it from three broad factors. Okay, what you call the cost factor, what you call the demand pull factor, and then what you might call the built-in factors. And in the cost factor, you'll be talking about cost of production, cost of goods and services, accessibility to disposable capital, and then how people are able to procure, these goods and services as against the cost of its production. So running around between, your cost pool and your demand pool is one word, which I've always, told you: productivity, production. Now, as long as you are productive or you are producing as an economy, you might have, your inflationary rates oscillating, between numbers, but you would never get to that point where you start going towards stagflation. Okay, that's the point I'm trying to make. If we don't understand it clearly, that the major challenges we have in Nigeria is that a lot of our productive activities, which is at the heart and soul of what drives your inflationary trends, is raw materials. Because what happens is that by the time you bring in these raw materials, you do not have the control of your back end. Okay, and then you bring in raw materials that are already finished goods from other people's, countries. Then you are at that level 5 or level 6 of now turning resin, which is finished product, into raw materials for the production of your plastics. And this is a country that has a capacity to flood the international markets with petrochemical products. So it's important, we lay this. Then the built-in factor will be what you just finished is costing. Cost of wages. Okay, sometimes when we talk about nationalism, nationalism is also, that ability and capacity for us, to look at, both what you might decide is your minimum wage and what will be your living wage, and then be able to now also see what the nation can be able to afford. This is where we must walk that thin line. I mean, everybody wants to earn $1 billion or $1 million, but when you earn it, and it's, I'm sorry to use Zimbabwe as a country as an example, and then it turns out, to be what the Zimbabwean, currency. Okay, what does it profit you? So there must be a relationship, a romance, an agreement, a synergy between that point where you are talking about your raw materials input, okay, that drives your production, factor. Against these inflationary trends, a question will be asked: how many companies, how many manufacturing outfits are still in full production? This will be a question that these are the underlying factors. So if you look at the statistics of man a man says to you, a lot of our inputs, we are buying at very high cost because of course, the cost pool factor, which I told you, cost of raw materials, cost of money, cost of transport, cost of storage, all those costs.
Yes.
Okay? And then you have not finished, producing this, and then you are selling it to a market that is very low, has very low access or affordability and disposable capital. This now becomes your catch-22 question, if I may start on that.
Brilliant. But I would like to talk about production, which is very important in this our conversation.
Yes.
But there is this drop we saw month on month, a bit of decline. Would you say that the policies instituted by the Apex Bank and maybe also from the fiscal side, are they yielding positive results in your thoughts?
For me, there are three ways you also want to look at it. You want to look at the government from the international perception. You now want to look at it from the policy levels. And then you want to look at it from the impact on, in parentheses, the so-called common man. The latest IMF report is very gladdening. I want you to look at it. Give, the policies of his present administration. He was very favorable, because what supposedly had been termed tough decisions, tough positions that became political, had been taken because they were the right way to go. Okay, against whatever other person thought about it. All right, when people were shouting that, oh, the common people, the common man, and that brings in this factor of a common man. Now, is our subsidy regime, is our handout policy that tends to protect the common man, is it what is killing the common man? Tolu. Now, what does that common man want? Is it to be given fish or to be taught how to fish? And to be taught how to fish, okay, means that some very drastic, policy positions needs to be taken. Have those positions, have those decisions, have those policies been taken? Yes, and you can start rolling them out. The Finance Act is there. Very good, very tough. Removal of subsidy is there. Very good, very tough. I mean, in the little run, I mean, in the immediate, it looks as if it's going to be the end of the world. But eventually, I can just give you one policy. I remember, if you could recollect, when we talked about, the ban of wheat, the grits.
Yes.
I mean, it looked as if everything was tasting funny. Okay, if you were drinking any of those malted drinks, that came from corn, then it was, but right now, nobody could even tell the difference. Okay, so it's that determination, first and foremost. What I'm trying to say is that in looking at the common man, you must be able to also position that common man against what has kept him where he is as a common man. Has it been the policies? Has it been the positions that we have taken? And if the policies of his present administration in floating the naira, somebody excitedly called me 2 weeks ago and said to me, oh yes, okay, Dr. Kengu, okay, here it is, the dollar is climbing back again. And I say, yes, that is what we call market forces. Okay, but please do also note that we don't have a free fall. I'm happy that you use the word, climbing and falling and climbing. That's the way it ought to be. So what you need to be asking me is, what can we now do to be able to now support, the naira in this fight to get its place in the Committee of Nations? Productivity. Now we return to it. And then productivity that is now driven by making certain that you expand your capacity, okay, to be able to grow your own raw materials. And for us to do that, I'm trying to get into a sabbatical now with one of the research institutes of government, the Raw Materials, Research Development Council. I was part of a study group from Reading University in the UK. A university has sponsored, some people, academicians, researchers, inventors, the private sector, to develop what you call a government green economy framework. And this university sponsored us, wait for it, to 4 African countries. And we were to also go to India. And this was Nigeria, Ethiopia, Kenya, and Tanzania. A university in the UK. Okay? So, now, if we are able to get 1 university or 2 universities in Nigeria, shovel ready to begin to do stuff. But there is an agency in this country that is doing exactly what it is, that I'm preaching now. And that's why I'm saying this on live television. It's called the Raw Materials Research Development Council. Tolu, I would like you to get them into this room. They have 46 patented, 46, from phytomedication to support medicine to, medicines that can support the treatment of diabetes, treatment of tuberculosis, okay, to scrubbers that can be able to, help, to limes, it's amazing. So if we begin as a country to say, okay, if we know that the causes of this inflation, I don't want to look at the numbers. If it hits 60%, so what? America hit 60%, and they didn't fall off the sky. China has hit 79%. They are not off the radar. A lot of more countries are hitting, 40, 50, 60, and are still surviving. What are they doing? This will be my interest. And what they are doing is that they are focusing on building their local capacity to be self-sufficient in their raw material needs.
And that is a task for this government. We've seen moves in at improving exports, promoting exports. The Nigerian Export Promotion Council has been doing a lot. And just like you mentioned, backward integration is also something for manufacturers. But in all of this, what more can government do to encourage export? Because that is where we can actually boost the economy.
One word: support Raw Materials Research Development Council to begin to commercialize their patents. I am saying to you, this is an agency that has a toxicology lab that is able to track, poisonous or poisons from across all the sectors.
Wow.
This is an agency, and that's why I'm saying that it's an agency of interest. Okay? Innovation and science is the only way out. There is no other way. Backward integration, forward integration that is not backed by innovation, science, and technology, STI, ain't taking us nowhere. This is an agency that has budded, cocoa seeds that are being grown in the southwest of the country now. I'm saying this because I know. So until we're able to now understand that agencies like that exist in Nigeria, and there are so many other ones. I am pointing this out now because, I have some, fair knowledge of what they're doing. So if governments can be able to, support them in whatever way, and be able for us to be able to expand our raw materials base that can support our industries, then it gives impetus to the Naira. How does it give impetus to the Naira? You are using Naira to produce what you're going to be selling in Forex. Yes. That's how currencies gain weight. That's how inflation crisis, falls. That's how you're able to bring down the cost factor and the demand pull factor. Because the cost pull factor is tied to production.
Yes.
The demand pull factor is tied to production outputs. And then you can begin to now talk about your belting factors, which is where you get, your wages. And then that way, you are now discussing wages that is not minimum wage. Okay, you're discussing wages that clearly, has captured the other indicators, health, transportation, education, whatever it is. So you now have some realistic wage system that is not even driven by the public sector, but driven by the private sector. Which is what I think the drive of this administration is. Let's be able to move in as many people as we can into the productive sector. I mean, to look at us, 66 million hectares of arable land, 320 dams in our country. We don't have any commercial farm projects, not one, not even producing food. Least talk about, now producing everything that we're doing now that is organic comes from the earth. Okay, imagine a situation where we're importing over 1.8 million, tons of fish on an annual basis, Tolu, and we have 320 dams, not one into commercial fish production. Am I making some sense to you? Now, I've told you that I was part of a team that was sponsored by one university, not even Oxford, Reading University. And they sponsored over 34 people across 4 countries in the African, a university. And how many do we have in Nigeria? So imagine if these research outputs of these universities were being applied, okay, to what you might call the cost, factors, where you are now able to make certain that everybody. I grew up in a university campus, University of Nigeria, Nsukka to be precise, and at the point in time, I'm 60 now, the milkman was bringing milk to my doorstep, coming from the university dairy. Ditto for those of you from the southwest. Go and look at what they did. Okay, you had an observatory in Nsukka. You had, greenhouses that were producing, all manners of vegetables in greenhouses. And I'm talking about the 70s. The university had a bakery. So if we are going to be getting out of, we can keep talking about inflation. What is government doing? No, what are we doing? You're doing your bit now by raising the issue, and I'm giving you my ideas by responding to it. Now, that man you're calling a common man will lift two of you and put in your pocket because he's got brown. How are you engaging that energy? Tell me one village you go to now that you have the land that is burnt out. Imagine what happens if, as a country, Tolu, we were able to focus on developing maybe 37 million, 3.7 million, 370,000, greenhouses, and we are putting it all over our country to begin to now produce stuff. Would we be talking about inflation, food inflation, headline inflation, that inflation? Nobody will remember it. When people come to your house, where I served in Katsina State, I served in a border town in the 80s. If you bought one bag of beans, they gave you 10.
Honestly, it's tortured. As much as we were looking at the figures and looking at the fundamentals, our time is spent. But if we can just wrap this up, how long are we going to wait for that transition?
Yesterday.
Because that's a big one too.
No, I tell you, you see, sometimes one thing I'll respect President Tinubu for is that he's very, very reactive and proactive.
Yes.
You can't take that away from him. He's listening. He listens. And this is the way a government should work. People said, we should have thought about removing the first subsidy. Oh, he's like, well, okay, he's removed it. Just the way he removed it is also the way he's taking some very major decisions. So it is for me and you, the new mantra for Nigeria must change. And I'm saying this publicly. I, Emeka Okembu, sitting in this studio, I am planting yams in bags in my house in Abuja. You are here. I will take you to my house and you see it. I live alone, okay, in a fenced compound. I have yams, fruits growing in my bag. Wow. And this is not the first time I'm doing it. I'm encouraging everybody I know. I'm going to take you to my resource center in Abuja. At one time, until the herds people started, I had cattle, sheep, Canadian dogs, goats, chickens in that resource center. So until we get to this point where it becomes all of us for our country, okay, and not our country to begin to, okay, everybody earns 1 million. All right, government says to the labor, we'll give you 1 million, or can only employ 10,000 people.
Yeah, sometimes that happens. They want to cut the workforce.
Now, so you say, okay, no, you must employ 1 million people and pay them ₦1 million. How does that make sense?
Dr. Emeka Okwengu, I must thank you so much, international business and project development consultant. Thank you for also starting the show with us here in Abuja. We appreciate it. Thank you so much. Thank you. Let's take a break. When we come back, we should be talking markets. Don't go away. This is Your Business Nigeria, live from Abuja.